This video was created for Kenton Ridge High School students who are taking the park. Watch this video and be prepared to submit an assignment in Google Classroom based on the video. The writing OGT has 13 questions. We've already practiced the multiple choice questions and short answer questions. So what about those extended responses? When you're asked to write several paragraphs, it's really important you know what you're doing. Which of the following would you do first? So what would you do first? Choose the answer that you think is correct. Let me read this question to you, and then you decide which are the qualifying terms that we would underline, and then we'll underline them together. Imagine that you've been asked to give a talk at a local elementary school about the similarities and differences between high school and elementary school. Explain to a group of elementary students what it's like to go to high school. Be sure to include specific details to support your explanation. Okay, so which words would you underline? Well, let's start with looking at the audience. Who's the audience, do you think? Well, the audience is elementary school students, okay? So we want to make sure we're thinking about what they think about school. All right, so that's one thing we have to include. What else do we have to include? Well, we want to make sure that we include similarities and differences between high school and elementary school. So I want to think about what the differences are between high school and elementary, but I also want to think about how they're the same. All right, so now we know what we're writing about. Let's make a list and brainstorm how they're the same and how they're different. That brainstorming should be the first part of your Google Classroom assignment. So make a list of 2 to 3 things that high school is like elementary school and 2 to 3 things that high school is not like elementary school. Okay, now that we've pre-written, let's start talking about intro paragraphs specifically. What makes up an intro paragraph? Well, it has 3 parts, okay? I suggest that you start with a vivid description that paints an image in the mind of the reader for your attention grabber. So before we talk about the other parts, let's work on that. How might you describe recess? Put that in your Google Doc. Okay, maybe you'll be like my 7th period class. It said it was fun and it smelled like cut grass and it feels like you're released from prison. So we want to make that into a couple sentences that really just draw a picture for our elementary students. So when we do that, we could come up with, you walk outside and smell the fresh cut grass. You're finally free from your school prison cell. That is a great way to start our essay talking to elementary students. Well, what comes next? All right, we've written our attention grabber. The next thing we want to include are some transition sentences. And the last thing we put in our intro paragraph is a thesis statement. Now you may say to yourself, okay, we did the attention grabber, we did the vivid description, but what about those other 2 parts? I suggest you don't write them in that order. In your final draft you will, but in your rough draft, after you've written your vivid description, you want to write your thesis statement. Your thesis statement should include all the things that you're going to talk about in your paper and sort of be your RA for the big paper, okay? So high school will be very different from your school now, but some things will remain the same. So let's look at what we have so far, okay? What's missing? We have our vivid description. You walk outside and smell the fresh cut grass, and you are finally free from your school prison cell. And then we put, high school will be very different from your school now, but some things will remain the same. Well, it doesn't completely make sense when you read it that way. The transition sentences kind of go in the middle, and they give you an idea of how to tie the description to what you're going to talk about. So, in high school, you can't escape your cell with recess. You walk outside and smell the fresh cut grass. You are finally free from your school prison cell. In high school, you can't escape your cell with recess. High school will be very different from your school now, but some things will remain the same. All right, so what I want you to do in your Google Doc is have a pre-writing with similarities and differences. Try to come up with your own vivid description, and using the thesis statement that we have, high school will be very different from your school now, but some things will remain the same. Have your vivid description, some transition sentences, and that thesis statement. Be sure to check Google Classroom.